name is Jocelyn. Today I'm going to be speaking about plastic bottles and the significant effect or negative effect on the environment. It's important to know that millions of tons of plastic bottles are produced each year by many different bottled drink companies. And in order for consumers to get their hands on these bottles, there's first the process of distribution and also the production and then the distribution. And in this process of manufacturing, transportation, and trashing, a lot of the Earth's air, land, and water is polluted. My first claim to support my argument is that the extensive production of plastic bottles is polluting the Earth's oceans. Marine litter mostly comes from plastic manufactured products. According to the National Resources Defense Council, around 80% of the marine litter originates on land, and most of that is plastic. And over the years, these plastic particles accumulate, and so now there's a large amount of plastic particles floating in the world's oceans. And a group of scientific researchers from the Public Library of Science reported an estimate of the total number of plastic particles and the weight floating in the world's oceans from 24 expeditions between 2007 and 2013 across all 5 subtropical gyres. Examples: coastal Australia, Bay of Bengal, and Mediterranean Sea. And they conducted surface net tolls and visual surveys transects of large plastic debris. Using an oceanographic model of floating debris dispersal calibrated by the researchers' data and correcting for wind-driven vertical mixing, a minimum of 5.25 trillion particles weighing 268,940 tons were found. Now, a lot of the marine life is also negatively affected by a large amount of the plastic waste polluting the oceans. And according to the Center for Biological Diversity, fish in the North Pacific ingest 12,000 to 24,000 of tons of plastic each year, which can cause intestinal injury and death, and transfers plastic transfers up to the food chain to bigger fish and marine mammals. Second, I'd like to point out that the extensive production of plastic bottles is having a negative chemical effect on the environment. Pollution from plastic waste affects the human species, not just the marine life. According to the Center for Biological Diversity, as plastic debris floats in the seawater, it absorbs dangerous pollutants like PCBs, DDT, and PAH. These chemicals are highly toxic and have a wide range of chronic effects, including endocrine disruption and cancer-causing mutations. The concentration of PCBs in plastics floating in the ocean has been documented as 100,000 to 1 million times that of surrounding waters. When animals eat these plastic pieces, the toxins are absorbed into their body and pass up the food chain. Second, the chemical transmissions are passed through some kind of chain process. And again, the Center for Biological Diversity states that as plastics break apart in the ocean, they also release potentially toxic chemicals such as bisphenol A, or otherwise known as BPA. And this chemical is a hormone-disrupting chemical that in animal studies has been associated with reproductive abnormalities such as lower sperm counts, hormonal changes, enlarged prostate glands, abnormalities in the number of chromosomes in eggs, and precancerous changes in the breast and prostate. Now, this chemical can reach up into the food web in a way that fish and other marine species mistake the plastic items for food. They ingest the particles and pass toxic chemicals through the food chain and ultimately to our dinner plates. The production of plastic bottles also contributes to air pollution. According to the World Centric Organization, toxic substances are used to make nearly all types of plastic. Some of these toxins escape from the manufacturing process and damage workers in the plastics industry, communities living near plastic manufacturing plants, and the global environment as a whole. Now, Jennifer Cho from the MIT News office states that the MIT researchers tracked ground-level emissions from sources such as industrial smoke tracks, vehicle tailpipes, marine and rail operations, and commercial and residential heating throughout the United States, and found that such air pollution causes about 200,000 early deaths each year. Now, my third point to support my argument is that the extensive production of plastic bottles is significantly polluting landfills. And the fact of this is that the failure to recycle has environmental harms to the landfills and the areas near it. Today, Americans discard about 33.6 million tons of plastic each year, but only 6.5% is recycled and 7.7% is combusted in waste-to-energy facilities, which create electricity or heat from garbage. The rest ends up in landfills where it may take up to 1,000 years to decompose and potentially lead to pollutants and into the soil and water. There is a significant large amount of plastic bottles that end in landfills. Despite recycling infrastructure that exists in order to facilitate the recycling of these bottles, according to the Container Recycling Institute, 86% of plastic water bottles used in the U.S. become garbage that ends up in landfills throughout the country. Considering that approximately 60 million plastic water bottles are used every day in the U.S., we can assume that nearly 18,834,000,000 end up in the landfill each year. Leaving plastics in landfills is also very environmentally hazardous. According to the Earth Institute of Columbia University, plastic is made from petroleum or natural gas and a chemical process that combines smaller molecules into a large change-like molecule, often with other substances added to give particular qualities. Some, like phthalates and bisphenol A, can have harmful health effects. Plastic production is estimated to use 8% of yearly global oil production, both as raw material and for energy in the manufacturing process. Because plastics embody energy from fossil fuels, they actually have a higher energy value than coal. Leaving so much of it in the landfills is not only an environmental hazard, it is a huge waste of valuable resource that could be used to produce electricity, heat, or fuel. Now this brings me to my conclusion that the extensive production of plastic bottles is polluting the Earth's oceans, lands, and landfills. And during the manufacturing, the transportation, and during the manufacturing and transportation, air is polluted by chemical transmissions through factory and vehicle smog. And after the plastic bottles are trashed and thrown away carelessly, the Earth's oceans and landfills are polluted. Thank you, that's all.
Jocelyn, let's start with the stuff that's good in the speech. I think that you have got a lot of data in the presentation. You cite your sources pretty efficiently and consistently. I like that. I do think that in the body of the speech you have a number of points that you're developing. I did have a little bit of problem with the signposting because it sounded like I heard at least 2 number 2s, and then I heard a number 3 after I thought I was already past number 3 and on to number 4. So it's a little bit confusing the way it's structured. One of the problems I think occurs early on because there's not really a very strong identification of what the proposition and the supporting claims are going to be. The very first thing that you do is identify the topic, and it sounds like you're giving us background on what the controversy is, but it's actually, I think, that is your proposition, and it needs to be more clearly signposted so people know that that's the inference that you're making. I think it's a little bit better at the end of the speech when you're summarizing, kind of telling us the point that you were trying to make. That helps rescue it a little bit, but because of that abstractness at the beginning of the speech, it really feels like a lot of the information is wandering around, and we're repeating ourselves in a couple of spots. It sounded to me like you had 2 or 3 points that talked about the chemicals in the environment getting into the food chain, and they're in completely different kinds of places. Like I said, I thought there was pretty good data on some of the points. The issue of air pollution, though, none of that information seemed to be specific to the manufacture of plastic bottles. It just had to do with the manufacturing of plastics in general. So I'm not exactly sure that that point was necessary. Maybe that would have been the thing to take out so that you didn't end up overtime and you could develop the landfill issue a little bit more coherently. The delivery of the presentation, I think, is really problematic. There's just way too much reading. You're going very fast. Because you've got a lot of data in the presentation, there's a tendency for this material to run together a little bit, and so the technique that you're using to deliver it, I think, creates some additional problems that you're going to need to work on to avoid having in the future. All right. Thank you.